Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, August the 6th, 2024. So it's all falling apart, isn't it? So the time of the recording of this video, stock market was down on Monday, at least Monday morning, and it was down on the previous Friday. So that, I think, was partly connected with the fact that you had Mercury going stationary retrograde very close after a new moon. I did talk about that, and so far that does seem to have worked out. It seems to be that double pressure of new moon moving from being waning to waxing, immediately followed by Mercury changing direction. And then we've got the UK, and we have riots all over the place, apparently. And I remember when I was in Morocco in 1981, I was looking at this newspaper headline. Forgive my French, but the headline said, L'Angleterre brûle, and I think that is translated as England burns. And sort of in 1981, at the same time as around the time of the royal wedding, England was on fire. And England apparently is again on fire. And this happens every now and then in England. We do have riots. The most famous riot, if you're into English history, was the Gordon Riots in 1780. In the Gordon Riots in 1780, they were upset at the Papist Act 1778, which gave Catholics some freedoms, like suddenly Catholics were allowed to join the army, provided they took an oath of allegiance. And some people got very upset about it. They thought it was the end of civilization as we knew it, that the Catholics would join the army and they would then have some kind of revolution, and this was a mortal threat. And yeah, there were riots. I actually want to try and look at the chart of the Gordon Riots. And then we've got the riots going on right now. And, it's easy to be critical, isn't it? To sort of say, well, these are ignorant people. Well, in a sense, there is a certain amount of ignorance. We had the stabbing of these three girls in Southport, and the mob started to blame Muslims and was attacking mosques. And in fact, the perpetrator was this 17-year-old from Rwanda. And I do have his chart now. I will be looking at his chart, the perpetrator's chart, and really had nothing to do with Islam. But still, the mob decided to gather, and this started a sort of a snowball effect across the country. And I suppose it reminds one. I remember long ago there was this instance where this mob started forming around the office of a paediatrician. And the reason being was because the mob got the words paediatrician and paedophile sort of mixed up. They saw the ped at the beginning of a word and they thought paediatrician, paedophile, same difference kind of thing. So the mob can be stupid, can't they? On the other hand, the Labour regime in the UK are just sort of blaming it on far-right violence, but it's kind of more complicated than that, isn't it? People on the left are supposed to be more analytical. They're supposed, from the people on the right, the left like to look at causation and social issues, and you don't want to just look at things on the surface. That is a sort of left-wing analysis. People on the left, they study things like sociology and they look at causes and deep causes, but just by saying it's right-wing violence, far-right-wing violence, always put far-right, it's kind of missing the point that there is an underlying cause, there is an underlying frustration at mass immigration, at not many job opportunities. It's not just about the far-right. It's just the far-right just can't just start a riot out of nothing. There has to be an environment in which people do get annoyed, in which people start to attempt to set fire to, I don't know, immigration centres, migrant facilities, when it's getting to that situation. So I thought I'd just look at what is going on in the UK. I'm not saying I'm going to come up with anything particularly original. I do think that a lot of it is connected with Neptune. But before I look at that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which it's a Tuesday, and it's Tuesday, August the 6th, 2024. Just a reminder, if you do like this video, you enjoy the video, I would of course be very grateful if you were to like it, and if you're not subscribed, I would be really, really happy if you were to subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, but it does make a big difference to my channel. So turning to the chart of today, the moon is in Virgo, going to be in Virgo all day long. It doesn't matter what your time zone is. And notice that we now have 3 planets in Virgo. We've got Venus in Virgo, Mercury in Virgo, Moon in Virgo. We've been following the train over the last few months as it moves from one sign to another, and the train is now entering the Virgo zone. And so the Virgo zone, well, it's always going to happen roughly at this time of year usually, but just at the moment we've got quite a concentration of planets. So people are going to be perhaps more focused on details than usual with the moon in Virgo. And the material details are also going to matter. And people are going to be concerned about what things look like. And the moon in Virgo is an earth sign, and that can be connected also with the body. So moon in Virgo can be very sensitive, for example, to pollutants, to garbage in your food. So if your food is full of chemicals, your body, our bodies might react more than usual with moon in Virgo. I'm not saying for sure, but it's very difficult to avoid chemicals, isn't it? But we are more sensitive perhaps with moon in Virgo, and it's not just the body, it's about financial details, it's the way what things look like, and if things are not placed correctly, we might be quicker to notice it than usual. But there is an analytical side to this, which I think could be quite fortunate. Moon conjunct Mercury in Virgo. A good and that analytical brain, being able to understand things, being able to really understand the important details. Yet things can go too far, and one aspect we have today is Moon square Mars. So Moon square Mars is about perhaps getting angry, but it can also just be irritated. We just feel annoyed, and with Moon square Mercury we can perhaps express that irritation through the things we say, just getting annoyed, getting angry, lashing out with our words, and just not feeling entirely comfortable. So it's important, if possible, if we can just try to relax a bit with that Moon square Mars and just be careful what we say. Just because we're angry about something doesn't mean that we have to say anything. We don't want to indulge in nitpicking criticism. And if we feel that we are being criticized in a nitpicking way, don't necessarily overreact to it. You may be just dealing with, someone's having a bad mood. God had a bad mood, in a bad mood, and it should pass. The moon is a fast mover. And while all that's going on, we've got the sun making a sesquiquadrate to Neptune. Now, this sun sesquiquadrate Neptune, in a way, it is quite important. The sun is at 15 degrees Leo. In other words, the sun is right now is halfway between the summer solstice, if you're in the northern hemisphere, and the autumnal equinox. So it's halfway there. And that is an important point. And I think actually tomorrow I'll be looking at this halfway point in more detail. I think I need to mention it. And so the sun at this halfway point is making a sesquiquadrate to Neptune. And that sesquiquadrate to Neptune at this solar halfway point is probably quite important. It underlies the absolute chaos that we're living in. And we are living in chaos. And you don't have to be in the UK to be experiencing chaos. You know, sort of Monday, we've got falls on the stock market. People don't know what's going on. People are concerned. And I think that today we're going to pick up on some fear. I mean, that's obvious, isn't it? You know, we've got all the Middle East stuff. So you don't really have to. You don't have to be into astrology to know that there's a lot of fear around. But here we do see that fear and uncertainty described by that sun sesquiquadrate, Neptune. Additionally, we have Mars quintile Neptune. Mars quintile Neptune is about perhaps developing a certain style. You know, Mars, we're trying to create a style that is perhaps a bit otherworldly, but some people might interpret that as trying to create a style of sleaze, something about, you know, perhaps being attracted to sleaze, being attracted to things that are a bit unusual and maybe a bit dark. So that could be Mars quintile Neptune. And it may not be about you. It may be how you see other people behave and how other people dress, and shadiness and sleaziness could be attractive in some quarters. Now, if you're an artist, then perhaps you can use this. You can paint pictures and write poems about the dark themes underlying Mars quintile Neptune. You know, Mars quintile Neptune, yeah, sure, there's an association with drugs there. Mars is where we put our energy. You link it up with Neptune, and Neptune can be associated with drugs or alcohol. So I suppose don't feel that you can get anywhere through drugs and alcohol. I suppose some people with addictive personalities might feel that drugs and alcohol might present some kind of a solution. Of course, it can't provide any kind of solution, but there might be an attraction there. It's something going on in one's head, Mars quintile Neptune, which one wants to sort of realize out there. So perhaps one has to try to be constructive with Mars quintile Neptune, which goes back to what I was saying about sort of art and poetry, writing. Perhaps we can reflect that Mars quintile Neptune in what we are actually creatively outputting. Now, turning to the heliocentric picture, let's have a look at. There it is. So we can see that Venus is opposition Neptune. It's coming up to the opposition of Neptune. I suppose that will probably be exact tomorrow. So with Venus opposition Neptune, I suppose it adds to some of the confusion of the sun quintile Neptune, and it may also say something about style. Venus can be about our sense of beauty and what looks good, and being attracted to two things that are a bit sort of otherworldly and wanting to express ourselves and perhaps dress ourselves in a way that is a little bit nebulous. So that's probably the main aspect today, Venus opposition Neptune. I don't think there's anything else to report. Mars is separating from that square to Pluto. So Mars heliocentrically is at sort of two Taurus, separating from a square to Pluto. So that square to Pluto, it's still there. We can still feel the anger around us. It was a very angry weekend, for example, in the UK when that Mars square Pluto was pretty much exact. And so some of that anger may be calming down, but I do think that to an extent it is still there. Okay, that's it for the heliocentric picture, and I'm now going to look at today from the perspective of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for today, which is Tuesday, August the 6th, for the 12 signs. Aries. Aries, you do feel that you want to make things simple. You don't want complications. And in that sense, it's very much a continuation of yesterday. I know it's nice to have each day being a discrete unit and that one day is different from another. But really, Aries, Tuesday is just really a continuation of Monday. And I think your priorities are going to be similar. I think that your sense of detail is probably going to be more intense. I think that you really will pick up on details. You will just notice things. It will be absolutely obvious to you. And I think that you're going to be taking the time to notice those details. And very often with Aries, Aries moves very, very quickly, and that's how it likes to work. It's a fast sign, and at the moment you are moving at a slower pace, and because you're moving at a slower pace, that means you can give yourself time to notice things and to think about them. So Aries, it's just very important that you are able to give yourself time, time to take things seriously. And there is a question when you're talking about serious thought, how far do you go? There's no doubt, Aries, that you're capable of very serious thought today. You'll see something, you'll perhaps listen to what someone says, and you will think about it, and you will analyze it, and you will really try to understand it. And in many cases you will reach some important conclusions. Now, some of your conclusions might be somewhat negative, and in that sense I perhaps warn you about what's the phrase, having a negative cognitive set. A negative cognitive set would be about maybe taking ordinary events, and perceptions. They come in all the time, and perhaps seeing them in maybe the worst possible way. And it's all about how you perceive them. So try not to exaggerate the difficulties that seem to be around you and perhaps your environment and perhaps the world. Things are difficult for everyone, but don't make them more difficult than they actually are, and don't jump to conclusions. I understand you're an Aries. You like to quickly assess things, appraise things, and come to a firm conclusion. But give yourself a little bit of time, to sort of work things out and try to get things into perspective. I really do think that is important. Another thing, Aries, is that it is a time when you do need to look after yourself. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you, but we've got a lot of stuff in Virgo. We've got Mercury in Virgo, we've got Venus in Virgo, we've got the Moon in Virgo. So with that build up in Virgo, I think that there is going to be a focus on your body and what you are consuming, what you are not consuming. And I think that you're going to put a great premium on purity. I mean, all of us are at the moment to an extent. But I think for you, Aries, I think it's going to be especially the case. You're going to start to look at what you're eating, what you're breathing in, and you're going to be asking yourself questions. Is this right? Maybe not. And what can you do to remove yourself from whatever these impurities and pollutants actually are? And at the same time, it's possible that your body is going to be more sensitive than usual. Again, I'm not making any clinical comment here. Just a greater sensitivity, and perhaps you need to just respect this sensitivity and maybe not eat something you've never eaten before, for example. Just respect your body, and yeah, something might look exciting, some new food stuff. Aries very often very adventurous in terms of what they eat. But maybe today you should try not to be too adventurous. And finally, I should point out that there is a square between the Moon and Mars. And that Moon-Mars square, more towards the end of the day, perhaps. Kind of does depend a little bit on your time zone, but that Moon square Mars may make you irritated. Just things making you annoyed, and there are just things you could say that could be quite hurtful. I mean, I said something similar yesterday, and I'm saying the same thing today, and I'm probably saying it with more intensity. I think today the scope for getting annoyed is probably greater than it was yesterday. And so Moon square Mars, you might lash out because of some detail that you noticed, you don't like it, and you want to say something. So it may be appropriate. But if you are going to make a complaint, and it is a day when I think Arians might feel that they need to complain about something, keep it rational and don't lose your cool. And I suppose that particularly applies if you're not complaining to an individual, but perhaps complaining to an organisation. You've got to keep your cool, not get annoyed, because that is the best way of getting your complaint answered. Taurus. Yes, it is a complicated day for many people. It's just a difficult time in which we're living. But somehow, Taurus, I think that you're going to be able to make sense of it all. And in a strange way, you might be somewhat inspired. You look at what's happening in the world, and in some ways, it's a vindication. And it's not so surprising. And, when you've got an unstable environment, it can inspire you. Yes, it can perhaps inspire you in a creative sense. And you will have, Taurus, a great sense of really what you can do. And that's perhaps what you should really be focusing on, what you can do. What you can do that makes you special, that makes you unique. It's not a time for having self-doubt, but it's at the same time not a time for being complacent. So you know what you're good at. At the same time, ask yourself, could you be better at it? Don't just do the first thing that comes to mind without any preparation whatsoever. It's just important that you look at what you're trying to achieve that you perhaps have some kind of a plan. And if you feel that in any sense that your talents aren't up to scratch, then that's not such a major thing. You can just take action to make sure that you are properly prepared. Maybe you need to go over something again. And so that's definitely something that you can do. And provided the preparations are right and everything is properly organized, then I actually think that today could be quite fun. You may be able to enjoy yourself, and most importantly, enjoy yourself on your terms. And at the same time, though, if you want to enjoy yourself, you may have to put in a little bit of effort, because there's something about you that is rather self-conscious at the moment. And of course, if you're too self-conscious, you're not going to be able to enjoy yourself. At the same time, it's kind of good that you're self-conscious, because it means that you're going to be able to enjoy yourself in a way that is constructive, that is not going to waste time, that is not going to waste your resources, that's not going to lead you into dangerous areas. So perhaps if you want to have fun, then the planning has to be right. And yeah, it's going to be very important that it's basically on your terms. And whenever you try to be creative, there's so often something or someone that tries to stop you. That is possible. There are people out there who have reservations, who may even have complaints. And I suppose when you are enjoying yourself, when you are finally able to let go, that might actually be the point where you get yourself into an argument because someone doesn't like what you're doing. And so that is a situation which you need to prepare yourself for. So you want to make sure that you're surrounded by people that actually understand you and aren't going to make annoying complaints and raise annoying objections. Now, one annoying objection that you might have to deal with is money. Some people are concerned about money, maybe more concerned about money right now than you. I mean, I think money is an issue that Taurus, you always regard as being quite important, but perhaps someone else regards it as even more important. And what someone says about money could perhaps upset your equilibrium. And you just have to make sure that you just respond in the right way. Just don't overreact. I think for everyone at the moment, it's just important not to overreact. But I do think that it's important for you not to overreact and just find that path to be creative and to have fun. The path exists, but you need to find that path, and you need to perhaps even plan that path. It's a difficult balance to get, but I think it's a balance that you can get right. And so in the end, with a fair amount of effort, it can be a fun and creative day. Gemini. Well, I suppose, Gemini, you're still getting used to the fact that Mercury is retrograde. So Mercury went stationary retrograde yesterday. Mercury is, of course, your ruler. And so with Mercury starting to go retrograde, you're possibly beginning to realize that things are taking longer than expected, and you're not going to push things. No, I think you're going to sort of start to appreciate that you need to really increase your time scales. What you thought was going to take a week could take a month, could even take 2 months. And I think by and large you're okay with that. And at the same time, Gemini, you probably are going to value your own space. Like yesterday, it is important that you are in control, and I don't think that you want to be overwhelmed and even undermined by things that are unfamiliar. Now, that's a little bit unusual. Gemini is a curious sign. Gemini likes things that are different, but right now you have your doubts. There is a certain sense in which you want to stick with things that you know and trust, and also stick with people and places that you know and trust. That way you can plan things, you can prepare things, you can organize yourself, and most importantly, you can find some roots for yourself. Roots do matter for a Gemini. Geminis can sometimes drift off in all sorts of directions, but right now, Gemini, I don't think that you want that kind of instability and excitement, especially now. We are living in unstable times. Really, I don't want to. I don't want to downplay that. I'm speaking as a Gemini, I suppose. I can see what's happening. You just have to read the papers, look at the internet, what's happening on, go to news channels on the internet, social media. You can see that, as I said right at the beginning of this video, things are falling apart. And as Geminis, we understand that. And so when things are falling apart, we perhaps need to stay in place. Observe things from afar, take notes, but it might be a good idea not to respond immediately. It's tempting to respond immediately to what's going on out there. But if we were to respond immediately, we would be responding, I think, from a position of ignorance, because we just don't know the facts. And over time, perhaps over the next few weeks, the facts will start to make themselves felt, and then we will be in a better condition to be able to consider what we're going to do next. But I don't think right now there's any need why we have to do anything. Now, there may nonetheless be irritations, because the moon is making a square to Mars. And remember, Mars is in Gemini. So Mars in Gemini just may be about something internal process where we just start getting annoyed, or we can't turn our thoughts off. Once the Gemini thoughts turn on, they just keep moving. They go round and round and round. And it may be our own thoughts are destabilizing us. And our own thoughts may be pushing us into taking action. Something happens, we feel we need to respond to it. But I think we need to somehow slow our thoughts down. We don't have to get caught up in our thoughts. We can be more relaxed, and perhaps we just have to allow the situation to develop. And when it is developed, when we can see the full picture, then we can start turning our thoughts into actions. Cancer. It's a day when a lot of people are in quite a disturbed state of mind. They're running around trying to work out how to respond, what to do. And you're aware of all of this, but I think Cancer, you are able to create a certain sense of objectivity. You're able to get a perspective on what is happening, and I think that you're able to think it through. And of the 12 signs, right now, you're probably one of the more sensible signs. You're not panicking. You can understand what's happening, and your thought processes are, very powerful. You're doing a lot of thinking, and your thinking is, by and large, pretty useful. You are successfully working things out. Though, don't allow yourself to be disturbed or irritated, and don't allow irrational fears to get in the way. Cancer as a sign, it's true, does have a strong imagination. Cancerians can be great storytellers and writers, and their imagination can be absolutely fantastic. But there must be limits to that imagination. And right now, you don't want to allow your imagination to get out of control and to sort of move you into areas that really you don't need to be in. You might, for example, be looking at what is happening around you and just assuming that the absolute worst is going to happen, perhaps having questions about other people's motivations, and coming to the conclusion that the world is more dangerous than it actually is. And there is also the risk that if you're thinking that things are so scary that you let your imagination go too far, you might say things or even accuse people of things which may not actually be true. So I would be wary of making accusations or making claims, at least not without thinking things through. And that's what you should be doing. You should be focusing, Cancer, on, I suppose, fact-finding. I mean, it is a great day, Cancer, for finding things out. So if there's something you don't know and that you want to understand, now is going to be very much the time to to get to grips with it. You'll just know what questions to ask, and you'll be able to really focus on the details that matter. And you just have to be a little bit subtle. You've got to be careful about how you ask questions, of course. If you ask the wrong questions, you can get people annoyed. But I think by and large, Cancer, you will be able to get the balance right. And I must emphasize, Cancer, that your brain is on good form, and you can really analyze things in a very effective way. And I think that going back to what I said about fears, perhaps through asking questions, through understanding what is going on, you can actually unburden yourself of your fears. So focus on the facts rather than supposition, and give your imagination a break. And by the end of the day, I think you can be much better informed and also feel a lot more comfortable. Leo. It's an interesting time, Leo, because the sun is approaching 15 degrees of your sign. 15 degrees Leo. So what is the big deal about 15 degrees Leo? 15 degrees Leo is the point where the sun is 45 degrees from 0 degrees Cancer, it's 45 degrees from 0 degrees Libra, and it's the time of year when you are halfway between the solstice and the equinox. And so we get a sort of a blending of those two events. And I think for you, you are very plugged in to what is happening around you. And, I do understand that Leo sometimes has a reputation for being a little bit insensitive maybe because you're just too focused on yourself and your own needs and your own agenda, perhaps. But I think you are very sensitive at the moment. Maybe it's better to use the word intuitive. I don't know, but you can really pick up on what is happening, and this is intensified by the fact that the Sun, which is of course your ruler, is sesquiquadrate Neptune. It's 135 degrees from the planet Neptune, and so that does make you sensitive. That does mean that you are really picking up a lot of information, and on all sorts of different levels. It could be emotional. It could be intuitive. It may, in certain cases, have a sort of a psychic and a supernatural feel to it, and you need to accept what you are understanding, what is coming your way, because Leo likes to be in control. Leo is a fixed sign. Leo is a sign which likes to be in the light. It's sometimes in the limelight. But when there's so much coming your way with Sun sesquiquadrate Neptune, and also the Sun being on the Aries point, you are plugged into the world. About the collective unconscious. It's where your unconscious links with the collective unconscious. And if there is such a thing as a collective unconscious, then you're very much in touch with it. I mean, I suppose we shouldn't forget that the person who popularized, and I suppose maybe even discovered, the collective unconscious was Carl Jung. And Carl Jung was a Leo. So perhaps you should follow Carl Jung's example and understand and appreciate the collective unconscious, and understand that you are linked into something that is far bigger than yourself, and you are understanding it. And at first that might be difficult. I'm sort of treating you like a Pisces. Of course, I understand you're not a Pisces, but maybe today you can actually pretend to be a Pisces. Imagine what it's like to be a Pisces. Part of some massive, larger sea, but it's not a sea really, because we're talking about perhaps intuition rather than feeling. But it doesn't matter. You are picking up on the whole thing, on the whole picture. It's all there, and it's really up to you, Leo, to work out how you deal with it. And it could be overwhelming, but it could be really inspiring, and it could give you just a gut sense of what is happening to the world and where it's all going. And I know that's all a bit lofty. There is another way at looking at today. I think, Leo, financial issues probably maybe weighing on your mind a bit. You do sort of understand the cost of things, and issues of inflation, what you're having to spend. Are you spending more than a year ago? Are you spending more than a month ago? That kind of thing is going to bother you, I think. And I don't think there'll be many financial details that pass you by. So I don't know if you're being shortchanged. I think you'll know about it immediately. And if something is not right, you'll know about it immediately. So that might mean that it's actually quite a good time to address yourself to financial issues and your own finances. Of course, in the United States, the tax deadline is April the 15th, but you can actually get an extension until October the 15th, provided you pay what you owe. And I suppose for American Leos who haven't done their tax yet, it's perhaps just a reminder that the hard deadline of October the 15th is getting closer. I think it's October the 15th. So that might be American Leos who haven't done their tax might be a good idea to think about it now, because you might be able to Do some useful work, and you'll understand the details. You will understand what matters, and if anyone is not behaving correctly with money, including perhaps some of your friends, people who should know better, I think, Leo, you'll know about it straight away, and then you'll have to decide what to do. Is it worth getting annoyed? Is it worth demanding that someone sort things out? Perhaps that someone pays you what they owe you. Is it worth making that demand? Maybe, if you get your timing right. Virgo. It's a time when Virgos are quite responsive to what is happening out there. The moon it's in your sign. You are responding, I think, to your environment on a sort of a mental level, but also on a physical level. You can feel your environment. You can smell your environment, and the right environment is very important to you. Being a Virgo with a moon in Virgo, if things are not right, if the vibes are wrong, your first inclination will be to leave. And if you're not comfortable, then sure, Virgo, then that's the right thing to do, because your sensitivity needs to be respected. And an unhealthy environment can just take place on so many levels. It may be something physical, it may be what's in the air, it may be what's in your food, but it just may be vibes, the kind of feelings that people are emanating. And I suppose people that are emanating bad feelings and negativity, you should steer clear from them, because you are sensitive at the moment, and you need to respect that sensitivity. And at the same time, you are fairly analytical, and you're trying to understand what is happening, and in most cases you're getting to grips with things pretty quickly. You do understand what matters. Perhaps there are things that you came across a few days ago, you didn't quite understand them, and now you're thinking again, and now it's starting to be very clear what is actually going on, and you are going to want to act on that. And one aspect we've got today is Moon square Mars, and this square between the Moon and Mars. Okay, if you're in Europe, it may be later in the day. Maybe if you're in Australia, New Zealand, it may be more about tomorrow. But I think, Virgos, wherever you are, you will feel that square between the Moon and Mars. And it's about a sense of what you feel needs to be said and what you feel needs to be done. And this Moon square Mars may be especially important if you're at work or doing something connected with business, or in some high profile situation. You will perceive things, and you will understand things, and if things aren't right, and I don't think things will be 100% right, if things aren't right, Virgo, then I think you're going to want to express your feelings, and you're going to want to perhaps even express your anger. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing to do, provided you just go about things in the right way. That's going to be an issue for many people today, regardless of their sign. It's one thing getting angry, it's another thing, how do you express that anger? Is it worth expressing that anger? But I think in your case, it probably is worth at least expressing your energy, because you are energetic, particularly on a mental level, and with this mental energy, you want to actually project it, see it through, and make sure that people notice it. It's just that a little bit of subtlety and tact might be important on the way. And, like yesterday, Virgo, there is just a slight danger that you possibly take things too far. Virgos could get themselves into a situation where the pressure starts to increase quickly. And you end up creating a difficult situation into a super difficult, even dangerous situation through your inappropriate actions. So don't be tempted to exaggerate, and always consider, what is the point in getting annoyed? What is the point in expressing your anger? What actually are you trying to achieve? And if you take things too far, if you haven't thought things through, then there could be problems. But on the other hand, if you don't express your anger at all, then that is just as difficult. What you don't want is to have trapped energy. You have trapped energy. Where does it go? You lose control of it, and it might go into your body, or you might sort of trip up or something like that, or you might drive too fast, or you might use dangerous equipment in inappropriate ways, and that could be very unfortunate. So Virgo, getting the balance right is important. You've got a lot of energy, and you can't just sit on this energy, but at the same time you can't just use it however you want, because it could get out of control. But you can get the balance right, and you're helped by the fact that you have good powers of analysis today. And these powers of analysis should bring you to the right decisions, and making decisions about how to get the balance right, and also what is an appropriate action to deal with the current situation. Libra. When I do these daily forecasts, you shouldn't necessarily think that each forecast for each day is completely discrete, because there is a continuation here, and what happens one day often follows through into the next. And for you, Libra, I do think that what was happening yesterday, Monday, there is a follow through, and so Monday and Tuesday are, I think, fairly similar days when you're going to have fairly similar challenges and opportunities. Of course, we don't want to emphasize just the challenges, just the difficult side of things. But like yesterday, Libra, I think that you're going to feel that a bit of separation might be useful. That you don't have to be in the thick of things. You can leave that to other people. Especially now, things are getting complicated. We do live in a complicated world, and we actually live in a world that is getting more and more complicated. Don't worry, it's nothing personal. It's just the way things are. So you can get some distance from yourself. It's absolutely fine. And sure, there may be temptations to get involved, but I would have said that in many cases, those temptations can be ignored. What can you actually do to make things better right now? Now, in a few days' time, the situation will be different. It will be a time when you have to show the world who you are and what you can do, but just maybe not right now. Right now, you need to discern what is happening. Discernment does matter. Discernment is about looking at everything happening and trying to make sense of it all. What is irrelevant? What is a waste of time? But on the other hand, what is really important? What do you need to focus on? There is some danger that things become so overwhelming. Again, I'm talking about the world. I'm not talking about you. But one can just focus on the wrong information, and there's actually a possibility of being misdirected. There is actually a lot of. It's true. There's a lot of misdirection around. People are trying to get you to focus on one thing when you should actually be focusing on something else. And getting that discernment right is going to require some thought, and getting other people's advice may actually be of limited value, and perhaps you'd need to trust yourself to make the right decision. And actually the right decision might in some respects be indecision. Why would you have to make up your mind now? There might be pressure to make a decision, but I think Libra, that is a decision that you have to regard as being your decision. Did I just call you a Virgo? I don't think I did, but just in case I did call you a Virgo, I know this is Libra, isn't it? You've got to make the right decisions or make the right indecisions. It's your prerogative not to make decisions. And still, there are going to be times when you feel aggravated, especially towards the end of the day. And the aggravation could come from perhaps new information, something you hadn't thought of, and you look at it again and you're thinking, oh, I hadn't realized that. I'm going to have to perhaps reconsider. And that's another good reason not to make decisions, because there's new information coming in all the time. So if you've locked yourself into a decision and then something new turns up, you're in you've made things difficult for yourself. You might have to break your promise, or you might have to just go back to a drawing board. So Libra, it's going to be very important that you keep an open mind, and you don't get upset if other people say things or do things that you weren't expecting. So while it is true that you probably shouldn't be listening to other people's advice, you shouldn't be upset by other people's advice. People can say all sorts of things. They don't necessarily know what they're talking about, but they could know what they're talking about. You do need to keep an open mind. And so if you hear something unusual, or you're given a piece of advice which doesn't make sense, then don't get upset, keep an open mind, and perhaps this advice could at some level be useful, but you don't have to follow the advice. It really is up to you. So Libra, it's just going to be important that you think for yourself, and that you don't feel any pressure to be committed, to make commitments. I don't think you should allow that kind of pressure to upset your equilibrium. And again, the moon doesn't move into Libra for a couple of days, and so in this period, as the moon is waiting to go into Libra, I do think that you can really bide your time, and there's really nothing much that you actually have to do. Scorpio. It's a time, Scorpio, where you feel that perhaps something needs to be happening. You know things are not 100% right. At the same time, you also know that things can be done to change the situation very much in your favor. You know that. You know that there is out there the potential for major improvements. And I think that's actually going to become clearer tomorrow, because tomorrow we have a sextile between the Sun and Jupiter, and that sextile between the Sun and Jupiter, which I think you're already starting to pick up on, is just giving you a sense that not just that things can be better, but actually maybe even things will be better, that you've got what it takes. So in one sense, there is an underlying optimism. But at the same time, Scorpio, you're capable of very serious thinking. And perhaps it's serious feeling as well. You can see what is wrong with the world in which you're living. You're picking up on it, and that is a theme. But when I'm talking about today, I'm going to talk about what's going on in the UK, and of course we've just had the stock market taking a plunge, and we've got all sorts of things going wrong in the Middle East and Ukraine, and you're very aware of this, and you're very aware of how it's all fitting together. And I think many Scorpios are starting to understand how it's going to unfold. And I suppose that goes back to serious thinking. I think the Scorpios are in a period when they are doing some very serious thinking. But you just have to make sure that serious thinking isn't so serious that it grinds you to a halt. Because there are certainly things to do. It's perhaps a time when Scorpios are beginning to understand their place in the world and what the world expects of you. And you've got insights that other people haven't got, you've got abilities that other people haven't got, and just maybe deep down you just know what you have to do next. Okay, you might take the view that you don't have to do it, that there's still something niggling away saying, yeah, it has to be done. And I don't think that you need to take the thing too seriously. You just have to just say, well, that's fine. You've got something to do. The Sun is going to start making a sextile to Jupiter very soon, and by tomorrow, things are just going to become much clearer. In fact, yeah, they're already becoming clearer, but still, it's not just that the Sun is about to sextile Jupiter, that's true, but the Sun is also making a sesquiquadrate to Neptune, and that Sun sesquiquadrate Neptune, you may feel that you're going in the right direction, but at the same time, you haven't got everything right. And if you go in the right direction with blinkers on, you know that if you have the blinkers on, in the end, you're going to go off course. But you know that, you understand that. And as a Scorpio, there's time now for being very perceptive, for just really understanding this world and understanding the complications of this world, and asking yourself and other people important questions. And talking about other people, I think that today can actually be quite sociable, provided it happens on your terms. There are, I think, going to be lots of people to talk to. There is a conjunction between the Moon and Mercury. Some of these people you're not going to like and you're not going to appreciate, but perhaps that's a question of enjoying differences of opinion. You know, if you just mix with people who just give you the same stuff, just tell you what you want to hear, that's not very useful. If you can talk to lots of different people today, I think that could be very helpful. And the people who are going to be most helpful are the people that annoy you. And that might sound strange, but when someone annoys you, there is a sort of a dynamic tension going on. That sort of knocks you out of your complacency. And yes, you are annoyed, but at the same time, deep down, you understand that someone has got a point. And sure, you're a proud Scorpio, you don't like to concede that point, but maybe you don't have to concede it publicly, but privately, you perhaps know that someone's got a point. Even if you get criticized, if you do run into criticism today, I think that you should just accept it. Maybe the critic has got it wrong, but maybe at some level the critic is making a good point. And if you take that point on board, then I think you could benefit in many ways. Sagittarius, you want to be heard and you want to be recognized. And I think, Sagittarius, you can be recognized. And one of the reasons you can be recognized is basically you have a pretty good understanding of what's happening around you. And I think that you're going to be able to communicate this understanding very effectively. And at the same time, you will, in your own way, cut quite an impressive figure. It's because you'll know what is appropriate, and you'll just know what people expect. And in terms of your appearance and your style, you will give the matter some thought. So if you have to engage with people, meet people, you'll know what kind of style is appropriate. And this is something I was talking about yesterday. It relates to the fact that Venus is moving into Virgo. And from a Sagittarian perspective, Virgo is a high-profile sign. Venus is a planet of style and appearance. So you're going to get the appearance right. You'll know what is appropriate. And so, Sagittarius, this is a time when I think that really people are going to take you seriously, and they'll be ready to hear what you have to say without having to ask too many questions. They'll just trust you to begin with. And once you've got everyone's audience, things can really move, and you will be able to explain things in a simple but authoritative way. And as a result, you'll be, I think, respected even more. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there's going to be no opposition. There could be opposition today, especially if it's something that you're trying to achieve. There's something you're trying to do that is important to you, and you may run into a roadblock. You may run into someone disagreeing with you, someone not being cooperative, and the key thing is not to panic. Just to accept this as some kind of irritation. Yeah, there is an irritation. It's not going 100% to plan. I think it's still going 80% to plan, but there's still something getting in your way. preventing you from doing what you want to do, and you just have to, I won't say brush it aside. It's always important to understand the nature of a roadblock, or to understand the nature of someone who's, someone who's criticizing you, or someone who's annoying you. But if you take it in good spirit and you don't get too annoyed yourself, then I think that things should work out extremely well. At the same time, Sagittarius, you haven't got all the answers, and you know there's more out there. There are more things to discover. And on a different level, it is going to be a great day for discovering things which are just outside your normal experience. Now, it's all about seeing something. It doesn't mean you have to take it on board. You don't have to change anything. In fact, you shouldn't change anything. But it's just seeing a new set of possibilities. And at first, I don't think you're going to really understand these possibilities, but they are going to be there. And sort of at a later stage, you can perhaps work them through. And maybe what it's about, Sagittarius, is just considering your role in the world, but set against some wider set of principles. We all have principles and beliefs, and Sagittarians, probably more so than most people, Sagittarians do have a broad spiritual or philosophical or political framework in terms of how they act. And at the moment, it's starting to become clear, what you're supposed to be doing and what your role is. And I'm not talking about career or money or short-term benefits. I'm talking about the much bigger picture. It's about perhaps, thinking about things, if in a few centuries' time, if someone were to write your biography, I suppose people won't write books anymore, but if someone were to write your biography and saying, what was your role in life? What was it supposed to be about? And just at the moment, you have insights about what it's all about. And if you don't have insights, then I would suggest that you try to work on developing these insights, because I do think that these insights are very much available. And so do listen to any clues you can get hold of, whether it comes from how people are responding to you, the thoughts going through your own head, your dreams and your intuitions. It's all giving you a larger picture about what actually you're supposed to be doing. Capricorn, you are feeling that it is in a way a crazy world. We're all feeling that it's a crazy world. But you as a Capricorn, you're probably taking the view that at some level you've seen it all before. I don't think that you're particularly freaked out by unfolding events. And I think that might actually give you a certain advantage. Other people are panicking. Other people don't know what to do. Other people just don't have any answers. But you're taking it from a sort of a more long-term perspective. These things happen. And I think that you can be quite a stabilizing force, and you can, I think, help other people to calm down. There may be people who are just moving this way and that way. They're worrying about one detail or another detail, and and they're worrying about what would happen if you don't do that, what would happen if I did that. Big indecision that you're seeing expressed by other people. But you Capricorn, you are just such a calming influence, and so I'm just hoping that you can really take advantage of it. I mean, at the very least, I think you can take advantage of it by helping other people become, more relaxed, giving them a sense of perspective. But it's also about you, isn't it? And what you can do. And I think that your ability to be open-minded and to see things from on high is just really useful. So many people are looking at things from the ground level. And because they're looking at things from the ground level, they just haven't got a clue what's going on. But because Capricorn, you're able to see it from the level of, 30,000 feet up, you see everything. And you understand everything. Okay, you understand everything at a sort of an intuitive level. You might not understand things in terms of being able to fully explain them. In which case, you can actually take action to verbalize your insights. And at first you may need to talk things through with yourself, and maybe you need to do a little bit of research, see if questions can't be answered, whether through books or the internet. So that's one thing that you can do. And I think that very soon, Capricorn, you'll just actually understand how things are going, and I think in many cases you're going to get a feel of time and time frames. Now, this is the most complicated thing, isn't it? When we look at the future, we can sort of generally see what is going to happen in the future, but sometimes putting dates on things can be hard work. But I think that Capricorn, you at the moment are going to be quite good at coming up with dates. So if you tell something, if you tell someone or you tell yourself that a certain thing is going to happen by a particular date, on a particular date, there is a good chance that that date you come up with may be actually very accurate. I mean, I'm not saying that as a guarantee. You may still get your dates hopelessly wrong. It's still possible. But I'm just thinking at the moment, Capricorn, your sense of timing is going to be extremely good. So maybe Capricorn, that could be useful. And of course, in terms of giving people reassurance, and of course, maybe to an extent giving yourself reassurance by saying to yourself, well, by a particular time, it's going to be like this. We have to wait. We have to be patient. But if we can wait until this date, then everything's going to be okay. So that might be a certain skill you have at the moment. And, finally, Capricorn, if need be, you can get people to just stop what they're doing and listen to you. If you happen to find that you're in a situation where you've got something to say and you feel that you need people to listen to you, to pay attention to you, that's something you really can do. You can stop people in their tracks, and straight away they will understand you're serious, and yes, they will listen to you, and in many cases they will follow your advice, even perhaps obey you. So, Capricorn, I think it could be a good day, and a day in which you can make things better, both for yourself and for other people. Aquarius, there is a place for deep thinking. There are a lot of things that need to be thought about very carefully at the moment. And you've got to give yourself time to sort of work things through. And it's going to be very difficult to think deeply about things if you're in a crowded situation, when you've got just lots of people all over the place with all their competing demands. It's just going to be really hard work, and you'll lose your concentration, and it's quite possible you may not accomplish much. On the other hand, if you give yourself the opportunity to really think about things and try to understand what is happening, and that is something that a lot of people are having to do at the moment, not just Aquarians, really trying to work it out. And I think that Aquarius, you're not afraid at the moment of asking deep questions, because I think really very deep questions have to be asked. And in a way, you're asking those questions not of other people, because I don't think other people are going to have any answers, but you're having to ask those questions of yourself. And what is it all about? And just making the effort to really understand it. And if you are confused about something, then the answer is there. It's actually very obvious. The answer is going to be in terms of what things look like. It's a surface answer. Sometimes you try to make things too complicated, but actually the answer is in the appearance of something. So one tries to be overcomplicated about it. One says, oh, well, let's look deeply. Let's look under the surface. That's where the answer is. But no. For you, Aquarius, the answer is literally in terms of what it looks like. It really is as how it appears. And so you don't have to be particularly subtle about it. Now, that might sound easy, saying it is how it appears, but it's not, because we're not really trained to look at things in that kind of obvious way. But it is really obvious. And so you don't have to overcomplicate things, and I think that you can come to some very important conclusions. And while Aquarius, it's important that you do have space, that you're able to reach your own conclusions, you do have to consider other people and their role in your life. Especially now, because the sun is right in the middle of Leo, right dead center of Leo. And you remember, Leo it's opposite Aquarius, and the sun rules Leo, and the sun is, it's halfway between the solstice and the equinox. It is that halfway point, and this does mean that certain people are at an important stage of understanding and development. It may feel as if they themselves have reached some kind of halfway point, but maybe they just don't know how to proceed. And this may relate to some of the important people in your life. Maybe partner, spouse, business partner, someone that does matter to you. And in one sense, they are in quite a good position, being right in the middle of Leo, sun right in the middle of Leo. But on the other hand, they're reaching a point where they don't actually know what to do. They just seem confused. And so try to understand other people's confusion. As I said, particularly if those people are important to you. And there seems to be something you can do to deal with this confusion and perhaps help someone move from one stage to the next stage. Now, that's important for you because you are, to an extent, dependent on other people, as we are all dependent on other people. And it's just that the people you are most dependent on may be holding you up by their own indecision, by their own confusion, and perhaps that's something you need to address yourself to. Just try to work out what's happening. And it's not the case that you necessarily have to provide direct answers, but you can just create an environment where another person is able to move from one stage to another stage. And so that is something you can do, which is just not just useful for yourself, but I think it's also useful for other people. So that's something to consider. A final point is that in terms of irritation, you may be denying yourself things today. That there is a possibility there. You may be a little bit too hard on yourself right now, and there may be things you'd like to be doing which are amusing, which you could enjoy, which could just be a fundamental part of your self-expression. But you're thinking, no, you can't do that, because perhaps things are too serious, there are other things to do, there are other concerns, it's not a time for trivial pursuits. But I think you need to give yourself some opportunity to enjoy yourself today. It needn't be for very long, maybe just for a couple of hours. Doing something you enjoy, and doing something that is fun. It's going to be a struggle to do it, because you might feel that it's inappropriate. But in fact, once you actually do start doing something you enjoy, it will just release a lot of other things, and you'll soon realize that it's really important that you do have a vibrant sense of yourself. And yeah, that can only happen when you are having fun. And today, you can have fun. You just don't have to make it too significant. You don't have to think that it's a great chore having fun, that you're perhaps... I know that's a contradiction, isn't it? How can having fun be a chore? But it might actually feel like a chore, having to make the effort of moving from a serious way of being to being a sort of a light-hearted way of being. It might seem an effort, but once you make the effort, you'll realize that it was worthwhile. Pisces, you understand that other people matter. At the moment, other people do matter. I suppose it's because you've got planets in Virgo. It's like yesterday. I mean, today isn't actually so different from yesterday. And I suppose one role of other people is to get you to think and structure yourself. Pisces as a sign can be a little bit chaotic. I mean, and it can go all over the place. And sort of every Pisces is looking for order on an unconscious level, because Virgo being the opposite sign to Pisces, that's this sort of reflex action. And so what other people are doing and how other people are behaving might at first seem a little bit concerning, but then you're being taught something important. Other people's behavior, words, actions are getting you to think about yourself and perhaps some of the details that you have maybe not taken seriously. And so through other people, by observing other people, you can start to understand some of the things that actually matter. And you might realize that some of the things that matter are, in their own way, a bit trivial. They might seem trivial, but actually they're not trivial. And just by sorting out certain key details, then you can make things much easier for yourself. And don't dismiss other people's concerns, because there are people out there who do actually understand what's going on. They're clever people. They notice things, and if they pass on this information to you, you should be happy. And if if you feel that someone is cleverer than you, don't be jealous about it. Some people maybe are cleverer than you in some areas. They perhaps know more than you in some areas. That's the way it goes. And so you shouldn't feel resentful of someone showing off their knowledge. You should actually be grateful, because I think that someone else's knowledge and someone else's observations, which you may be perhaps in denial of, or you could be in denial of them, that also could make you annoyed. It could make you react badly. But if you just instead take all knowledge, wherever it comes from, as a blessing, and all, not just knowledge but analysis. Someone else's analysis of a situation may actually be better than your analysis of the situation. And that might be a good reason why you need to talk to people today. And if you've got problems, something that's bothering you, don't keep them to yourself. See how other people respond, and watch how other people respond. And you may find that someone else's response just gives you so much information, just gives you a clearer understanding about what is actually happening in the world. So don't ignore other people, and don't let your ego get in the way. We don't like it when someone is cleverer than us sometimes. We don't like it when we have to listen and someone is lecturing to us, but sometimes it can be useful. And I think today it can actually be useful. But Pisces, it is a two-way process. There are certainly areas in which you can benefit from other people's knowledge and experience, but of course you shouldn't underestimate your own knowledge and experience. And if you are in any form of position of authority, then I think that you will know how to be taken seriously. And it may be that by giving people their say, by letting people give you their opinions, you will actually be boosting your reputation, and your people are going to respect you even more by giving people their say. But having heard what everyone says and having listened to your own feelings, you may then be in a position at some stage during the day when you can assert your authority and assert your knowledge and your experience. You are going to come over in the end. If you get it right, if you respect other people, then you're going to find in the end that your own authority is respected and can actually be enhanced. And that's all I'm going to say on the 12 signs. And now I want to look at today, Tuesday, August the 6th, from the perspective of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Tuesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching segment of this video? And the first hexagram I got was number 16, which is contentment. So contentment gives a sense of complacency. We seem to be sort of kind of happy with the way things are, but at the same time we know that things are going wrong. We can see the problems building up, and yeah, sure, we know that at some stage we're probably going to have to deal with them, but right now we can just bide our time, we can just relax, perhaps we can enjoy ourselves, and sooner or later, yeah, sure, we're going to have to take action in the end, but let's not worry about it too much. And that's obviously not a very good way of being. And I think that to begin with, some of us realize this. I think we do realize this, actually. And we're sort of aware that maybe this is the calm before the storm. That's what we feel. And I think that we're starting to accept that we need to look after ourselves, and that we certainly can't be complacent. And, the second line from the bottom moves, and this is actually a line I've had quite recently. And with this line, it's talking about being as firm as a rock, perhaps understanding the situation we're in, not just us, but maybe the world at large, but understanding our situation and knowing that very soon something has to be done, but also perhaps being aware that now is maybe not quite the time to take action, not quite the time to panic. I mean, panic can be a response to a difficult situation, but being firm as a rock is about not panicking. Just, we understand the situation is okay right now. It's not going to be okay for much longer, but we just need to work out what to do next, and we don't want to be in a hurry to do anything. And then we move to the third line. The third line from the bottom moves. Now, there is a danger here. We can perceive a problem, but the contentment lies in the fact that we are waiting for someone else to do something. Perhaps if we're in some kind of hierarchical structure, we're waiting for someone higher up in the structure to give us some leadership. If our leaders are not panicking, are not telling us to do anything, well, fine, we can just bide our time, can't we? And for ourselves, we are not going to want to do anything, and we'll assume that someone else is going to take the initiative. And I think that is quite a dangerous position to be in. And I think here that we need to be very awake, and there is a sense in which there's a temptation to close our eyes and to pretend that nothing bad is happening. Look, if our leaders are not telling us to do anything, if our leaders are not panicking, then we're going to be okay. We can just close our eyes and just hope that everything is going to be fine. Of course, things are not going to be fine. And there is a suggestion here that I think that we will realize that we need to make our own decisions. We can't just sit on the fence. We can't be permanently hesitating. At some stage, we have to take action. And this allows us to move forward. And when this line moves, we've got two moving lines, so we move to a different hexagram, and in fact a more fortunate hexagram, and we move to hexagram number 32, which is duration. So this gives us the idea of understanding that we need to be resilient, and that's a key answer to what's happening. So if we feel ourselves to be in a situation which is chaotic, then what we need to do is we need to create a situation where we can persist. Duration is about deciding on a set of principles, deciding how we're going to manage things, and then just sticking with it. And duration does require a lot of self-discipline, but we just have to trust our own decisions. So I think we have to, in a sense, in the first instance, we have to understand there is a problem, and we mustn't be complacent about it. I think other people may be complacent about it, and this problem may well be of a general nature. It's not about just us and our immediate circle. It may just be about the world at large, bearing in mind that we are living in a very chaotic world. It's not just in the UK where we got riots. We've got this, certainly as of Monday, the stock market seems to be collapsing, and as far as I know, last time I looked, and we've got global tension. It's absolutely not a time to be complacent, and these things can impact us economically, and decisions we make now may matter, and we just can't wait for other people to make the decisions for us. And so we take the initiative, we make a decision, we decide what's important. We also remember that concept of being firm as a rock, and we do what's necessary. And when we stick with it, and we don't allow ourselves to be distracted, distracted in the sense of panicking too much, or distracted in the sense of being told, oh, it's fine, we can relax, everything's fine, it's all going to be okay. And so by creating a plan, sticking with it, we're going to be fine. And now I need to consider the chaos in the UK. And, how does one perceive this chaos in the UK? Is England really burning? I haven't been to England for over 5 years. It seemed okay 5 years ago, sort of. These riots, it does happen every now and then, and you could say, well, it's just part of a riot season. It's high summer. People do riot in the summer. There may be no particular reason why they're rioting, or it could be for some absurd reason or some misapprehension, like with the Gordon Riots. So here is a chart for the Gordon Riots. Gordon Riots, they took place at a time in 1780 when things were not great in Britain at the time in 1780. So obviously 1780 was in the middle of the Wars of Independence, and I think people were concerned, and it was a big deal, Britain losing its colonies, being involved in this war. And so that was the backdrop. And then you had this Papist Act 1778, which allowed Catholics to, for example, to join the army, and they could have their own schools. Obviously quite a reasonable thing to do. Okay, they had to say an oath of allegiance, I think, or certainly to join the army. You couldn't just... But still, the mob got upset. And you could say that the reaction to the Gordon Riots was maybe similar, by the people in charge, was similar to the reaction of the current riots. The Wikipedia article used this wonderful phrase, very familiar phrase, that when talking about the Gordon Riots, it talked about the middle class elites. The middle class elites didn't like sort of lower class people rioting. They thought it was all really stupid, and they were quite dismissive of it. Now, at the time, they were probably right to be dismissive. It's kind of a bit ridiculous by modern standards to be upset about allowing Catholics to join the army and to have their own schools. But it may be that, of course, the riots were describing other tensions in society. It wasn't just about Catholicism, it was perhaps about something else. But anyway, the riots started on June the 2nd, 1780. I don't know what time. I've set this for London. You can see at the time of the Gordon Riots, it was a day of a new moon, and sort of the recent riots last weekend, so on Sunday, when they were trying to burn down an asylum centre or some hotel that was putting up asylum seekers, there was a new moon, and there was a new moon on the same day as the Gordon Riots, and at the time of the Gordon Riots, there was Mars conjunct Uranus. I know we had the exact Mars-Uranus conjunction was quite a long time ago now. It was July the 15th, or July the 15th, yeah. So, but there's still a feeling, a Mars-Uranus feeling, just after the general election in the UK, just after when we had this Mars-Uranus conjunction. So I do think that there are actually a few echoes here in terms of the Gordon Riots and what's going on in the UK. And additionally, we've got on June the 2nd, 1780, we had Neptune at 0 degrees 55 Libra. In other words, Neptune is pretty close to the Aries point, and there's nothing more Neptunian than the mob, is there? The mob misunderstands things, it misinterprets things, it gets its facts wrong, and that would be Neptune on the Neptune. No, we can't say it's on the ascendant. This is just, we can say that it's pretty close to 0 degrees Libra. In the same way, but Neptune right now is pretty close to 0 degrees Aries. So I believe the Gordon Riots was sort of 1.5 Neptune cycles away. And so I think again, there are certain similarities here between what's going on now and the Gordon Riots. Now, talking about Neptune, so Neptune, it is about Neptune, isn't it? I mean, a lot of it is about Neptune. So if you look at the beginning of it all, it all started on July the 29th, when you had the Southport stabbing, when a 17-year-old boy stabbed 3 girls and killed 3 girls and injured, 10 others. And in a way, it wasn't an immigration issue. Sure, his parents were immigrants, but he was born in Cardiff. As far as I know, there was no religious motivation in terms of a perpetrator. But this was the beginning, and you can see that Neptune was at 2944 Pisces, and very close to the Aries point. And even though this was not really an act of terrorism, it wasn't an act of terrorism, it was just a disturbed teenager. You got people demonstrating outside mosques, and then it led to sort of attacks on asylum centres, and so it all got out of hand. And so this is, I think, really is about how Neptune is working, and how Neptune is working in Pisces. Now, as far as if you look at the new moon immediately before the full moon, immediately before the stabbing. So if you look at the full moon just before the stabbing, Neptune was on the descendant. So Neptune was on the descendant at the time of the July the 21st full moon. And so Neptune was really strongly placed there. And it's not just any Neptune. It's Neptune conjunct Skeet, which is a fixed star connected with shipwrecks, disasters, the kind of thing that is going on in the UK, although there's not shipwrecks and floods. And so it is about Neptune. So what is Neptune really about? And what are a lot of the protests about? Now, Keir Starmer, the government, are saying, well, it's just about right-wing extremists. But you have to look at the underlying picture. And with Neptune in Pisces, you're thinking about boundaries, aren't you? You're thinking about borders and boundaries being usurped and being overwhelmed. And Neptune in Pisces, although I don't myself believe that Neptune rules Pisces, as far as I'm concerned, Jupiter rules Pisces. But still, I will accept that Neptune has an affinity with Pisces. Pisces is the sea. It has no borders. You can't contain the sea. And it's about, I think, the immigration issue and the fact that borders are so porous. And it's not just, of course, about the UK. Immigration is a major issue certainly in the United States. Major electoral issue. That's why, Kamala Harris is getting criticism from the right about being supposedly an ineffectual border czar. And, I don't know how many millions and millions of people have come into the country illegally. And so how can you have borders with Neptune conjunct Aries? With Neptune in Pisces. And so you could say that as Neptune has moved through Pisces, perhaps the immigration issue has just become more and more intense. And I suppose I should think, when did Neptune go into Pisces? Neptune went into Pisces, it sort of went into Pisces. Well, it's interesting. Neptune went into Pisces around on and off. For example, it went into Pisces February 2012. It started going into Pisces. This is really interesting because Neptune started going into Pisces in April 2011. And this was the time of the Arab Spring. And as a result of the Arab Spring, the United States saw its chance in terms of Syria. And so there was a lot of criticism of the Assad regime in Syria. And the United States saw its chance. And the United States funded all sorts of groups in Syria. A lot of them were Islamic fundamentalist groups. And it sort of destabilized the whole country. And as a result of US intervention in Syria in 2011, and I think we can very much blame Hillary for this, you had a complete disaster in Syria. And you had a civil war, and you saw massive immigration into Europe and Turkey, into Turkey and Europe as a result of the United States' actions in Syria. Of course, it wasn't just the United States, it was Saudi Arabia and Britain and France were fueling the flames. So this was a crisis that was, but I would have said was largely caused by American intervention. They saw their opportunity. And so you had this flood of immigrants coming into Turkey and Europe from Syria. And so that was, from a European perspective, that was as Neptune was going into Pisces. I understand that illegal immigration has been, mass movements has been happening well before that. But I think that the Arab Spring was a major stimulus to one type of immigration from Syria, and it had major political impact. I mean, it certainly had an impact in Germany. Germany, when Angela Merkel said she would take everyone from Syria, and that Germany could absorb these I think, literally millions of immigrants, and it actually had an impact on Britain's the results of a Brexit referendum in 2016. The Vote Leave side had this big poster of immigrants from Syria, the threat it being that if we stay in the EU, then we're going to get flooded. And now that might have been just fear mongering or whatever, but it made a difference. And I'm 95% convinced that if the Syrian crisis hadn't have happened, Britain would not have voted leave. I think Britain would have voted to stay in the European Union. And again, this is what Neptune in Pisces is all about. And it does seem that the immigration crisis, in terms of popular resentment, is reaching its peak as Neptune is moving towards the very end of Pisces, as Neptune is moving almost in Aries, got very close to being in Aries. And then, of course, next year, Neptune will move into Aries. And it will be very interesting to see what happens when Neptune moves into Aries. I think when Neptune goes into Aries, that is going to create, certainly in Britain, big problems for the Labour government, as I'll be explaining in more detail in a bit. Now, looking at the beginning of the immediate crisis in the UK, it was the Southport stabbings. I've already looked at the Southport stabbings, and I don't really want to look at the Southport stabbings too much in particular detail now. Just to remind you that Southport, at the time of the Southport stabbing, when these 3 girls, remember when these 3 girls were murdered, plus a lot of other 10 people were injured. It was a yoga group, a Taylor Swift themed yoga group, and this is what sort of kicked it all off. And you can see the moon is applying to a conjunction of Uranus. I mean, for an event which is going to cause civil breakdown, it's kind of not surprising that you've got moon conjunct Uranus. Absolutely to be expected. And you've got South Node on the ascendant. But there is the perpetrator, and here is the perpetrator. His name is Axel Ruda Cubana, and he was born in Cardiff in Wales, but his parents came from Rwanda, and we don't know a great deal about him. I mean, it just seems absolutely bizarre that he can get it in his head to take a taxi to this place and kill and go on a stabbing rampage. I suppose soon enough we'll sort of start to know what happened. So, but the one question I did have is, what was actually going on in his chart when this happened? And does this show the chart of someone who would do that kind of thing? Well, of course, we don't know, I suppose, whether he's guilty or not. I suppose he hasn't been formally... he hasn't been found guilty of anything. I suppose we should remember that. But I've been talking a lot about Black Moon Lilith recently, and it's Black Moon Lilith, I suppose his true Black Moon Lilith is conjunct Mars, and Black Moon Lilith, again, who knows what was going through his head when he did those stabbings, and why he did it, and what sort of dark forces were behind it, what emotional forces were behind it. But he does have Mars conjunct Black Moon Lilith, and because again, we don't know formally whether he's guilty, I suppose, but there's his Mars conjunct Black Moon Lilith, and look at his Uranus. Uranus is exactly opposition his Black Moon Lilith. So there's something connected with Black Moon Lilith going on. Also, he's got Sun conjunct Saturn. I read somewhere that he was on the autistic spectrum. I mean, there's no reason why, if that's true, there's no reason why someone on the autistic spectrum should commit this kind of crime. But he has Sun conjunct Saturn. Sun is exactly conjunct Saturn, and Sun is not just conjunct Saturn. Sun is conjunct Saturn on the Aries point at 15 degrees Leo. In other words, 15 degrees away from the solstice, 45 degrees from the solstice, 45 degrees from the equinox, halfway, but he was born halfway between the solstice and the equinox with that Sun conjunct Saturn. And so I think that is pretty difficult, I would have said. And if you look at the transits that he had at the time of the stabbing, Black Moon Lilith at the time of the stabbings was at 9 degrees 20 Virgo, and his Mars was at 9 degrees 18 Virgo. So he had Black Moon Lilith was exactly conjunct his Mars and was pretty close to the conjunction with his Black Moon Lilith. So that kind of fits pretty well, doesn't it? And then look at what was happening in terms of transiting Neptune. So transiting Neptune was exactly sesquiquadrate his Sun-Saturn conjunction. So in terms of transits, even though I don't have a time of birth for Axel Ruda Cubana, then these transits do suggest that something bad could have been happening around this time. It certainly ended up with him being arrested. And I think that it is also a good demonstration of Black Moon Lilith working. True Black Moon Lilith, remember. This is not mean Black Moon Lilith. It's true Black Moon Lilith. So I thought I'd just mention Axel Ruda Cubana's horoscope kind of in passing. So going back to the crisis in the UK, we have to, I suppose, also think about the government, the Starmer regime, when Starmer took power. So this is a chart of the Starmer regime when Starmer became Prime Minister. It's not such a happy chart, is it? It's got Neptune is quite close to the descendant. If that was the time Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, then we got 241 Aries on descendant. So Mars and Saturn will be crossing the descendant next year. I mean, I think that this government, even though it's got this huge majority, it's almost hold below the waterline, isn't it? I'm thinking. I mean, we've got 5 years of this, but it at the moment it's already in trouble, and so that will be interesting how that works out. And notice we've got South Node on Black Moon Lilith in the first house here when the government came to power, and there's Moon square Black Moon Lilith. I think it's like this government is having to deal with really difficult unconscious forces in the British population, and it feels like the government is just freaked out by it and just doesn't actually know how to respond. Oh, notice also, of course, the government came into power July the 5th, 2024, with the approaching Mars conjunct Uranus. So that is further evidence that this is difficult. Okay, look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden got inaugurated with an exact Mars conjunct Uranus. Okay, this is not an exact Mars Uranus conjunction, but it's applying, and so as this government progresses, things are going to get more difficult, and we're just starting to see it. And that Black Moon Lilith, notice that Starmer became So Starmer became prime minister just before a new moon, and so if you look at that new moon, it's about 6 degrees. So the midpoint of the sun moon midpoint is around 11 Cancer. So you've got black moon Lilith square the sun moon midpoint. So, and that's really what this government is actually about, and what we've seen with the government so far. It's actually dealing with huge tectonic forces in British society, which are coming apart at the seams, and they're all revealing. It's all revealing itself, and then here's the government trying to gloss over it by saying, "Oh, well, it's just right-wing extremism," and that's all it is. And I think, but of course, it's much, much deeper than that. And I think that the Starmer government has kind of got Black Moon Lilith kind of hard-coded into it. I mean, when I set this chart up, when I first started talking about this chart, I wasn't really thinking about Black Moon Lilith. I'm getting quite impressed by Black Moon Lilith, actually, to be honest. So that's the Starmer regime. And of course, the woman who has to deal with all of this, the Home Secretary, just a reminder, I'm not going to spend long on her chart, Yvette Cooper, Home Secretary, don't have a time of birth for her. I don't. I know I got Placidus house cusp, but I do not know what this is set for noon. Forget the Placidus house cusps. But she has got her sun at 2940 Pisces. So the Home Secretary has got Neptune on her sun right now, and it's really difficult for her, isn't it? I mean, I think that she's probably overwhelmed by it all, and I just think I'm getting this feeling that the Labour government just don't know what they're taking on. I just don't think they understand how difficult it is, and that they're dealing with forces that just are completely beyond their comprehension. And I think that's sort of reflecting Keir Starmer's chart as well. With Keir Starmer, he's Virgo, Sun Pluto conjunction in Virgo. He's a lawyer. He likes things to be done in a particular way. And how does Virgo deal with Neptune in Pisces? Okay, Neptune has went opposition his sun a long time ago, but I think he's just looking at the details here. Sun in Virgo, going back to just what he was saying about it's just far right stuff. That's just blame it on them and it will be fine, and we can just forget about what's deep down. And that can be perhaps a problem with Virgo, and also the fact that he's got stuff in Libra. Virgo and Libra are two signs which, yes, they're next to each other. So signs that are next to each other are usually very, very different. But that pairing, Virgo and Libra, they do have certain things in common that they perhaps can work on the surface. Let's focus on the surface details here. Let's not go too deeply down, and that just might be how it's happening, and which brings me finally to the UK chart, the England chart. Just a reminder, assuming that this was when William I was crowned. It's a chart that astrologers like to use. I mean, I like to use it. I mean, there are, of course, other charts of the United Kingdom, but in the 1066 chart, I mean, by the way, it says December 31st, 1066. That's just because the date has been converted to Gregorian. My software likes to do that. It is December the 25th. Not December the 31st. But it's just that at that time, the moon was at 29 Pisces. The moon is the mob, and the moon is, we've got Neptune conjunct the moon. So it's kind of not surprising that Britain has all these problems, and the fact that you've got Saturn conjunct the South Node. it is a problem, and you can see that people are rioting with Britain's moon. The moon represents the people, and Neptune is conjunct England's moon. Okay, those are a few thoughts on England and what's happening in England, and the anarchy that maybe is starting to unfold. And I do hope you found that video interesting. If you did enjoy this video, I would be very grateful if you were to like it, and if you're not subscribed and you enjoyed it, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.